Welcome to You Decide. I'm your host, Errol Lewis. And before we get started, I want you to mark your calendars. We're going to be doing a special live podcast event on Monday, September 29th. And it's going to be a crossover between You Decide and our other podcast, Off Topic on Politics, that's hosted by my colleagues, Bobby Kuza and Courtney Gross. We're all going to be there. You're going to be there if you want to. We're going to give you ticket information and so forth. We're not going to charge you, but it has to be, kind of orderly. So we're going to make tickets available. We're going to let you know. I'm pushing for a cash bar. I don't know what all it's going to look like, but we're going to have guests. We're going to talk politics. We're going to have a great time. Monday, September 29th. Mark your calendar. On to the episode. This week, independent candidate for mayor Jim Walden announced that he will not be continuing his campaign. He dropped out of the race for mayor. It was a surprising move, not so surprising in some respects. We're going to talk about that. He said his decision was based on the need to prevent Zohran Mamdani from becoming mayor, or to consolidate opposition to Mamdani around one candidate. He said, if it can't be me, I'll drop out because I don't want to hurt the chances of somebody who can beat him. And there's a lot of other breaking news around that. The New York Times reporting that the White House might be getting involved in this race. There's a whole lot going on, and the man with the answers is sitting across from me. Jim Walden, good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
It's great to see you. Thanks, Errol.
So, true to your word, you checked the opinion surveys that showed you with a slim chance of winning. There's plenty of time. You could have turned it around, but you said you didn't want to do that. You wanted to prevent what you said was a Trojan horse going into City Hall. So staying with that metaphor, what about Zohran Mamdani is a Trojan horse? What's inside the horse?
Yes. So I would say that it's a mixture of things that are not consistent with New York values, let alone American values. Zohran Mamdani has been a detractor of the police in the most harsh terms for years. And while he's moderated his views, or at least moderated his language, I don't think his fundamental anti-police perspective has changed one bit. Obviously, he said he's a critique of capitalism. I don't think he wants a capitalist system at all. I think at the end of the day, when he says things like taking private property and seizing the means of production, he means what he says. So in my view, whether you call him a socialist or communist, it's academic. And I fundamentally believe that his policies are anti-Semitic. We can have a debate. I can't look into his heart about whether he is an anti-Semite, but certainly his policies are, as someone who's not a Jew and really has in this regard kind of no horse in the race other than wanting to see someone who's consistent with New York values. His policies to me are deeply anti-Semitic. And so when I say Trojan horse, that's what I mean. And this embodies the views of the DSA, and this is happening in races all across the country. There are now investigations on whether or not Chinese and radical Islamic groups are putting money into these races. I've seen some of the analysis, and it's concerning to me. So this is what.
Okay, I want to circle back to that in just a minute, but I do want to ask you about some of the breaking news as we're sitting down.
Of course.
The Times is reporting that advisors to President Trump have discussed the possibility of giving Mayor Eric Adams some kind of a position in the administration as a way to make it easier for him to drop out of the race as well, with the same logic or with the same strategic goal as you just outlined of trying to make sure there's a consolidated opposition to Zohran Mamdani. Had you heard anything about that?
I had heard some rumors for the last couple of days about incentives to both Adams and Sliwa. I didn't know whether they were true. I have heard rumors of Eric Adams dropping out imminently. I don't know if it's true, but what I do know is this. We all have to face the harsh reality that the numbers favor Mr. Mamdani. If he has a bad general election, he's going to get 550,000 votes. If he has a good general election, he's going to get 650,000 votes. We don't know how many people are going to show up, but New York has not been a bastion of people showing up in great numbers. So the math is the math is the math. And for anyone, I said at the beginning of October, anyone who's still polling so low in the beginning of October really has to have a tough conversation with themselves about what matters more, their ambitions or protecting New York from extremism. So I made my decision early because I wanted to show some leadership, and I didn't want to spend more public money on something that I thought at this point in time was futile.
How and when did this turn into a Stop Mamdani campaign for you? Because at the time that you announced, I don't think he was even polling at 1%. Nobody even knew who he was.
You might not remember this. We filed for mayor on the same exact day. So on October 24th, we both filed. I had no idea who the man was. I thought, oh.
And vice versa, by the way.
I'm sure that it's true. I'm sure that it's true. So I think the Democrats did a terrible job in opposition research during the primary. I mean, I was so upset about this, sitting on the sidelines, knowing that some of the opposition research was out there. I did more myself. I paid some people to do some of the opposition research, and we found things that nobody else was focused on. And frankly, there's some stuff in there that was so alarming to me. I wrote an op-ed about it to try to get other people in the media to question Mr. Mamdani about why he would use his platform to uplift terrorists, like actual terrorists, not people that have terrorist sympathies, but convicted terrorists. That, to me, is super concerning. And when I realized the depths of his views on the police, which I didn't know earlier, frankly, I decided that one of the things I wanted to do in the race was to really make sure that everyone had the available information.
So I hear, it's interesting because some of what went on during the primary campaign, and you and I were at a bunch of different forums, and there were the televised debates. There are people who were saying, sometimes at the same time, which made it a little confusing, they were saying, as a mayor, you can't do certain things. And then they were also saying, we're afraid he's going to do these certain things. So on the one hand, he was portrayed as somebody who was talking big about social changes that no mayor could enact. On the other hand, people are afraid that making him mayor would lead to drastic social upheaval. And I kept thinking throughout, I was like, you got to pick a lane. You got to pick an argument, right? I mean, you're a lawyer. I know you guys can argue both things at the same time.
Same time, right.
But, or arguing in the alternative, either this or that. But what do you think it is really?
Yeah, so I think it is a little bit of both, and I'll try to unpack it without going on too long. I think on the past words issue, whether it's on Israel, the police, et cetera, I think he's very much like Trump in the sense that he has said things very clearly over time, and I think that people are right to say believe him when he says these things. On the policy stuff, though, I don't think it's necessarily, there's some overlap there, like with the police, but freeze the rent has been my greatest example, which is, let's put aside the fact that de Blasio did it 3 times. Mm-hmm. It's had devastating results. It doesn't solve the problem, right? There's 250,000 people in the city that can't afford the rent they have now, and they're paying 50% or more of their income on rent. Mm-hmm. So freezing rent for people that can't afford it is not a solution, but somehow it gets turned into a slogan, and it appears at parades and marches, and everyone's like, yes, freeze the rent, without really thinking, well, what does that mean, and what's that going to do to our stock of rent-stabilized housing? And by the way, is that just rent-stabilized housing, or is that freeze the rent for everyone? Mm-hmm. He was very ambiguous in the beginning of his campaign when that slogan was catching on. So I think in all of those ways, people didn't know what to make of him, were really confused and surprised that he shot up so quickly, and did a lot of backward-looking research, and then didn't articulate very well what their concern was, which is why it got jumbled. Right.
I mean, so look, something like the rent freeze, I don't pay rent. I'm a homeowner. I've got a different set of gripes that none of you politicians ever want to talk about.
That's not true.
That's fine. I'll just take out the trash.
Property tax reform, baby.
It's fine. I'll take out, of all of the problems that homeowners have, there's some people who have a tax problem, a property tax problem. I'm in one of these gentrifying zones that was low income for the last 40 years. And so it's the one good bargain I get from the city of New York is they send me this tax bill every year. And I'm like, sure, yeah, you can have it today, A lot of other stuff that's wrong, but that one seems to work, at least for me. Anyway, when he says freeze the rent, look, there's whatever it is, 975,000, close to 1 million people who are in these rent-stabilized units. It sounds good to them. It may be short-sighted, and I would agree with you that it is. That there's a whole category of landlords, I know some of them personally, who are keeping their units vacant, right? So it's ironically, it's this perverse outcome where you're actually getting fewer units instead of more that are affordable and so forth. But it's a popular slogan, right? I mean, it's, maybe it's a stunt, right? I mean, maybe it's...
But there's a lot of things, Errol, and you've been so much closer to politics than I have. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but you were my first significant interview when I was a private lawyer after I left the government. I still remember that. I was actually quaking. Me, you, and Brad Lander.
Oh, come on.
Seriously.
Yeah.
But in any event, this is the thing that drives me to distraction, the sloganism that our politics has become. Think about it. Prohibition was labeled as a progressive idea in the 1920s. So progressive. What did it result in? Enormous crime, major health consequences. People were literally drinking what was effectively gasoline. And the same thing is true with today's progressives in a lot of ways. Like, we've had 9 months of a mayoral election. How many candidates are talking about kids in poverty? Right? We have 29,000 kids in poverty born every year. Who's talking about that? Like, all of these things that are so-called progressive, how is it progressive to have a to get back to your issue, a rent stabilized system that's supposed to be for needy people that doesn't have means testing? Right. So a rent freeze for that cohort, however large it is, and the city doesn't even keep track, is just a windfall.
Right. No, that's right. It's a lottery. It's a municipal lottery. With the prize being, having a place to live, which is a gruesome way to handle something that important.
Gruesome's a good word.
What did you think the race was going to be about? Right, the race turned into, for you at least, how do we stop Mamdani? But what did you think it was when you filed last October? What did you think the race was going to be about?
Well, the one thing, just to be clear, that I didn't anticipate that Cuomo, if he lost the Democratic primary, would switch to being an independent. He had not been a supporter of third parties for all of the time that he was in governor, so that was a surprise to me. But what I thought it was going to be a lot more driven on policy solutions, right? We have a lot of problems in the city, and whether I fooled myself or whatever, I really believe that if I had done a lot of deep thinking about this. I've obviously, from my litigations, have had a lot of experience with the problems in City Hall, and I fundamentally believe that if I had policy solutions that were detailed and nuanced and achievable, that people were hungry for those sorts of solutions. So the sloganeering aspect of the campaign, I just didn't anticipate. And frankly, I probably could have done a better job pivoting into it, but it's not, as a lawyer who's mostly focused on substance, it's not the most comfortable space for me.
No, I hear you. I mean, look, there's what you do, and then there's who you are. And voters really tend to like that second category of show us who you are. Right. And you, of course, are attempting to bridge it like a rational person would and say, well, you can see who I am by looking at what I've done. And people usually don't have time for all of that, right? They want to hear, freeze the rent.
But this is why I jumped out of the plane. This is why I did the boxing tournament. This is why I did the skateboarding, because I wanted to show people that there was a side of me that was whimsical and fun and didn't take myself too seriously, was not risk adverse when it came to things like that. I sang at one of my events and put it online. So,
well, the guy in your exhibition boxing match seemed to have taken it seriously, right?
A little too seriously.
We were supposed to talk last week. My audience doesn't know this. We were supposed to talk last week,
and I got knocked out.
Your people said that you got knocked out and had a concussion.
I literally was TKO'd in the third round.
Oh boy!
What are you going to do?
Well, you should have explained to the guy.
No.
There's a bit of acting here, right?
Well, the funny thing was, I really didn't want that. I didn't want him to go. It was a charity boxing thing. It was
but this guy's like a retired cop with a bad attitude or something, right?
Well, he's a prosecutor actually who's boxed for 30 years.
Oh my
He's a
God.
Colonel in the Marines or the Army. I can't remember. He's a very tough guy.
What are you thinking?
I thought it was going to be
fun. Got up at 5:30 every morning for like 3 years, to exercise.
Couldn't it be a good metaphor for my campaign? Very well-meaning, and I trained like a dog, and I got TKO'd in the third round.
Well, as a New York lawyer, you should have figured out a way to give him, say, an incentive to take a dive for the greater good. Let's talk about some of the policies that you did want. What were the primary issues that you wanted to advance? What were you hoping would catch fire? And frankly, what do you want the next mayor to do, regardless of who wins?
Yeah. So I would say, in classic fashion, I have 5 things. Let me start with the first part A. No, I'm kidding around. So I'll break down. Number 1, my housing plan would work. If anyone actually looks at the numbers, we can build more than 200,000 units a year, 50,000 of them being rent stabilized. We can absolutely do it. There's enough land, there are enough incentives. And the crazy thing is, we can do it with fewer tax incentives if we give free land up front and we streamline the regulatory system so that people can get shovels into the ground faster. Because the capital carry for building is one of the huge expenses and the uncertainty. And using 5% of the profit, we can actually give a stipend to every single kid born in poverty that would be a life-changing amount of money. So I thought that policy was going to be electric when people realized that we could actually solve the housing crisis and confront kids in poverty at the same time. So that's number one. Number two, corruption. Like, it's really clear why we have corruption in the city other than we have bad candidates. It's that nobody's really watching. We have the Department of Investigation, which is well-meaning, but it's kind of a toothless agency, right? They don't have real prosecutors. They can't bring their own cases. They can, beg, borrow, and steal to get the U.S. Attorney's Office or a DA's office to take their cases. But to solve that issue, we don't need a public advocate. We need a citywide corruption czar who is not reporting to City Hall, because who from DOI was going to seriously investigate a mayor that they report to, that appointed them?
Right.
I mean, there have been a couple of candidates who I think had the moxie and the independence to do it, but that's not the way the system's set up. So I thought that was an incredibly important policy. My citywide Department of Public Integrity would replace the public advocate and would have complete independence from City Hall. And that's where we'd really tackle the corruption problem.
I like that. Going back to the stipend for poor kids, about how much would it be?
It really kind of depends on how the numbers work, but it was somewhere between $120,000 and $150,000, either at age 18 or 22, 18 if they want to use it for college, if they're not going to pursue a higher degree or vocational training, then they'd wait till they were 22. But it's not an insignificant amount of money.
Sure.
And if we had changed a couple things in my housing plan to make it more ambitious, it could have been an even larger stipend.
Was it based on something that's been tried elsewhere?
No. It was, the idea...
It reminds me in some ways of what they called baby bonds, right? The idea that, you give somebody, instead of trying to worry about somebody's Social Security 60 years later, as at birth, you give them a relatively small stipend, but it's like a 529 account or something like that, tax protected, and it can grow over time.
Yeah. It's like all of those things. Yeah. It came into my head because I'm familiar with something called a value-added tax. So when there's a program and the government actually adds value, they can take a percentage of it for a social good. And so mine was what you call a VAT, but they all work the same way. And I thought it would be a way to bring the left and the right together because, you're giving in to, greedy developers. I don't agree with that phraseology. I've got a lot of friends who are developers who are most philanthropic people I've ever met. But you're dealing with developers on the one hand, but to marry poverty into that program and have a potential solution, or at least a partial solution, I thought would encourage people to put all of the petty things that happened during the course of all these building plans and obstacles.
Sure.
I thought they'd put them aside to accomplish the larger goal.
That's a tough one. But I like it. I like the way you're talking. Which of the candidates comes closest to, in other words, have you endorsed anybody? Who comes closest to doing what you would like to see done?
I don't know that there really is anyone that comes closest. I don't really mean to dodge, but I meant what I said in July, which is I really believe two things. Number one, that every candidate should have the opportunity to run his or her, but there's only his race the way that he sees fit and to make the case to the voters. But in this environment, I'm going to wait until October, and I'm going to endorse, to the extent anyone cares about my endorsement, I'm going to endorse the person that is the front runner. Okay. And I'm going to keep doing everything that I can do to keep New York focused on the other non-Mamdani candidates not attacking each other. Everybody knows who they are. All of these attacks are only strengthening Mamdani every time they do it. And number two, coalescing around whoever the front runner is in October so that that person has a month to run head to head. Because that's how important I think it is for New York not to become the next poster child of radicalism.
I've known Adams and Cuomo and Sliwa for decades.
Longer than me.
Those guys couldn't order a pizza together, honestly, Jim. I mean, seriously, anchovies or pepperoni. Their next agreement will be their first agreement.
But here is where maybe I miscalculated and maybe I didn't. I don't know. I mean, obviously, when I put this no spoiler pledge out in July, I was hoping that there would be an opportunity to coalesce. Now, it wasn't hope's not a great strategy. So I did my own outreach. I tried to get other people to reach out to them. I tried to get people at a table and have a conversation about it. When that didn't work, I put out essentially a math problem, not a math problem, but a math analysis of different voting scenarios to try to underscore to people that everyone was going to lose as long as everyone stayed in the race. It didn't move the needle. So this is why I decided at the end of the day that it didn't make sense for me to talk the talk and continue to be accused of, well, why don't you drop out? Why don't you drop out?
Right.
That's not really kind of what the other voices didn't motivate me. But there's a part that resonated with me when I looked at my account and I was like, I've got $1 million in money that's other people's money. It's not my money. And I can either spend that money and try to get that surge and get those endorsements, et cetera, or I can do the right thing.
Yeah, let me ask you about that, because there's some technical questions that were bouncing around our newsroom. I thought I understood some of it, but you can help me out with this.
Please.
That $1 million plus that you got in matching funds, you don't have to give it back.
Well, I had a little bit of a tiff with a city and state reporter over this, because I think that there's some people who, in my humble view, are closet Democrats who are trying to make it seem much worse than it is. Every single candidate, if they get out of the race or they lose with matching money, with public money in their account, has to give the money back. So the rule is with the CFB that you have to give back unspent or unqualified money. Okay. So let's just say, I'll give you a hypothetical. Yeah. Let's just say I had $1 million in my account, which I do. That $1 million, I have outstanding expenses. I can use that money and pay outstanding expenses as long as they're backward looking. I can't spend any money going forward of public matching funds, but it's a commingled account. It's like, how do you figure it out? You figure it out with an audit at the end. And at the end of the day, if it came to be that I spent money on unqualified expenses, I would have to pay that back.
But qualified is really broadly understood, right? I mean, most politicians will call this walking around money, right? Like if you want to buy a table at the county dinner, if you want to show up at, a parade and you need to help your aides get there, so you buy car fare for all of them, that kind of a thing.
Well, so I don't mean to get too complicated about this, so I'll try not to, but there isn't a lot of visibility around this, and I'll give you an example. I mean, I think I'm the first candidate in history that has given back this much.
You're talking about giving money back?
No, when I stopped, I had almost $1 million.
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear, this was yesterday.
Yeah. You're right. So I have $1 million plus dollars in my account.
Right.
And so, but how much money did I give away to charitable contributions during the course of the campaign? I gave $25,000 for the boxing match. I probably gave maybe another $25,000 in smaller increments to a cancer center, to a kids camp, et cetera.
Yes.
I chose to do that. That is a permitted expense, but it's not clear whether it's a qualified expense.
Oh, I think they'll let you get away with that.
You want to make a bet right now? Nickel bet.
Yeah. I think
that they will deny that as a qualified expense. And then if I didn't have enough private donations in my account, then I would have to pay those contributions back. That's an example.
So now, as a very technical and practical question, first of all, I don't know why you pulled down your website. Whatever you paid for that, it's at least good for another month or something. I couldn't find a lot of information I was looking for.
Because I wanted to do the right thing. I didn't want to.
That's not the right thing. It's, what's on the web is what's on the web, right? Just like you did.
But it also had a donation button, and there were other.
Well, yeah, I mean, you adjust it, but you don't just make the thing vanish.
If you want it, I'll send it to you. But I literally went through a process to make sure that the CFB knew I was going to do this, and frankly, they complimented me on the way that I was planning to do this, because I wanted it to be super clear, and I didn't want there to be any voter confusion, which is one of the reasons I'm trying to figure out how to get my name off the ballot.
What's going on with your staff? I mean, are they all fired as of today?
No, well, I mean, again, you can't make forward facing.
Right, but if they were working on a contract, you still have to pay out the contract. Right?
Well, but all of my contracts have a provision saying that they can be terminated at any time.
Okay.
So in any event, we're getting CFB guidance on this. I obviously want to be as generous as possible.
Yes, just do the right thing for these people. Yes.
I'd write a check from my own pocket if I could, but we put the question.
No, don't do that.
Yeah, well, whatever. I mean, it's at the end of the day, they worked really hard. They deserve every penny that they can get.
Yes.
But it's not my money. So it's one of the questions that we've asked the CFB to clarify whether or not we can pay them through at least the middle of the month or the end of the month or whatever the CFB says we'll do.
And look, regardless of what your intents are, if you intended to sort of help another candidate, I'm pretty sure those are qualified expenses, because you announced that you're suspending your campaign, not that you're ending it or terminating it, right?
Here's the funny thing. The CFB doesn't have a rule that tells you what language to use. It doesn't have a rule on this issue at all.
Okay.
So I initially said, what's the process for suspending? And they said, there is no process for suspending. There's a process for taking down your CFB link. That's it. So literally, when we announced, you see on the website, or not on the website, sorry, on our social media, that we terminated because that was the word that seemed the most appropriate to us.
Yeah.
But even that's not in the CFB guidance.
Yeah, that's not quite right. No. I mean, usually, and you hear this with presidential campaigns, they say suspended because it's understood that there's going to be a period of time during which you have to sort of close out contracts, take care of your people, figure out all of your qualified expenses and
welcome to city politics. You know what? In the reason it's called suspended at the federal level, and I think at the state level, is because it's not irrevocable.
Right.
Once you do whatever you're going to do, whatever the word is for city purposes, you're done.
You're done.
You're done.
Interesting. Yeah, there are a number of candidates, I won't call their names, but who ran in the past, suspended, and then ran several years later, and it turned out that there were hundreds of thousands of dollars left over, that some of which was able to be brought forward even years after the fact. Mm-hmm. Apparently there's some drop-dead date, but that date is years after the campaign is over. But in any event, you're foregoing a lot of money that you could have put to political use. In fact, you could have used it on behalf of whatever candidate emerges that you would like to see prevail in November.
Mm-hmm. I did. I gave up a lot just because at the end of the day, I wanted to make sure that I could say to myself, and hopefully other people would agree, but at least I would know that I ran the cleanest campaign that one could possibly do. I mean, there's so much gray area that I saw in this whole process that I just wanted, knowing that if it didn't work out, I was going to go back to my career. I wanted to make sure that I handled this the same way that I would handle any issue in my life.
Got it. Well, no, that's what a white collar lawyer does, right? Make sure all of the paperwork is done properly. Also, what's next to you? You're going to go back you're going to go back to private practice? Have you gotten the bug? Are you going to start running you're going to run for Congress now? Are you going to run for something else?
You got any races that you think I should have? No, I'm going to go back to my firm. I'm going to resume my career, and I'm going to continue to fight for New Yorkers. I mean, one of the things that I've done over 23 years that I'm proud of, but I'm also satisfied by, is not just taking paying cases, is taking cases where I can do some good in the world. As a kid that grew up in very imperfect circumstances where a lot of institutions failed us and failed me, it's always been important to me. So I'm going to continue doing what I've been doing for 23 years.
Back in 2011, you and I were on the same side of a fight that you lost, and I now realize we were probably both wrong about trying to stop that bike lane from going up on Prospect Park West. I thought it was a bad idea at the time. I'm willing to acknowledge that I was wrong. I've never biked on it, probably never will, but...
well, here's the thing.
It worked out.
I also acknowledge that the bike lane has been a good thing. But what I won't acknowledge is two things. One, we didn't lose. We actually won on appeal, and they reinstated the case. But then at that point, the clients just couldn't go forward. It's been 2.5 years. And secondly, DOT did lie about the safety data. They did.
Oh, interesting.
Right? So that was my clients would not have had a case if the DOT hadn't lied about the safety data. It showed that crashes and injuries went up by 20%. So that actually wasn't even my conclusion. When I was about ready to say to the clients, we can't bring anything, and they said, can you just look at this data? And I couldn't make heads or tails of it, so I brought in can't remember who it was. I think it was like the Brattle Group or someone, to look at the data, and they said, "Oh my God." So we had this big epiphany moment. So you were right about the bike lane, although the way that it went in and after it was fully functional, it's had at least a slightly negative impact on crashes and injuries based on the data. So, but the data that they published, they said it decreased crashes and injuries when it in fact increased it. That's bad government.
Yeah, no, right. Anybody who travels that area knows that was, like I said, I just thought it was a horribly bad idea at the time. Before I let you go, what's your word of advice to whoever's going to get sworn in on January 1st?
Oh, God. Please get the police back to where they need to be. I mean, to me, I understand why affordability has become such a critical part of the race, as it should be. But the more important thing to me that drives everything, including affordability, is getting New Yorkers the safety that they need. And yes, overall, there's a lot of positive things to say about the crime statistics, but there's not a lot of positive things to say in Mott Haven and Hunts Point, and a little bit of good news to East New York. There are communities that have been suffering. They're always at the top of the crime statistics. They're always Black and brown communities. They are always already stressed environments, oftentimes with a lot of public housing communities in them. And I just pray to God that if, whether it's Cuomo, Adams, Sliwa, or Mamdani, I'm confident that at least 2 of the 4 will do it, but that the other 2 hires the police officers we need, gives them the support that they need, and retains them so that we can get safety under control for all neighborhoods.
Okay. Thanks very much. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Do you want more conversations with the people who are shaping the future of New York City and beyond? Check out our New York One podcast channel in the description. And hit subscribe to let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage, elections, and issues.